students, welcome to math.serve.com. In this clip, we're going to be going over how to compute net pay. Let's start by taking a look at the scenario, and it's as follows. Maria is single, has an annual salary of $74,000 and is paid bi-weekly. She claims no allowance and pays federal and state taxes using the tables below. So the table on the left is the federal tax table for 2016, and on the right here we have a graduated state income tax table. Her Medicare and Social Security taxes are 1.45 and 6.2% respectively. Her annual medical insurance, which her company pays 60% of, is $4,000. Question. Calculate Maria's number 1, gross pay, 2, deductions, and 3, net pay. Alright, we're going to start out by calculating the gross pay. Okay, let's figure out her gross pay per period. So let's write that down. Part 1, gross pay per period. In order to compute this, we'll simply take her annual salary and divide it by the number of pay periods she has in a year. Okay, number of pay periods. Alright, let's go ahead and determine the necessary components that can help us to calculate her gross pay per period. The first part we need is her annual salary. What is Maria's annual salary? Maria's annual salary is $74,000 a year. So annual salary, $74,000. How many pay periods does she have? It is stated in the problem that Maria is paid bi-weekly. So what does that mean? It means that she's paid every 2 weeks. Okay? So her number of pay periods is the number of weeks in a year divided by 2, which is, we have 52 weeks in a year. If you divide that by 2, that gives us 26 pay periods. This is what bi-weekly means. Okay? Alright, now we know the number of pay periods that she has in her annual earnings. Her gross pay per period will simply be the quotient of the annual salary of 74,000 divided by the number of pay periods in a year, which is 26, because she's paid bi-weekly. If you plug this into the calculator, you end up with $2,846.15. This is how much she gets paid every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks before taxes are deducted. Okay? So her pre-tax earnings is $2,846.15 every 2 weeks. Let's go ahead and box that. Now the next thing we are asked to determine are her deductions. Okay? Deductions are the dollar figure amounts that are subtracted from her paycheck before she gets her final net pay. Okay, so what are we going to be looking at here? In this problem, her deductions are made up of the following. From the problem, we can see that it is stated that she pays federal taxes, state tax, she pays Medicare tax for retirement, she pays Social Security for retirement expenses, And the last deduction is medical insurance for unexpected medical events or to maintain her health situation. Okay, so these are the deductions that we will be computing to determine what her deductions are, and that will ultimately help us figure out the last question, her net pay per period. Okay, let's start with the first one, federal taxes. Federal taxes. To compute her federal taxes, we're going to be making use of this federal tax table. This is as of 2016. The first thing we want to do is figure out what tax bracket she falls in based on her earnings of $74,000 a year. Okay, so I'd like you to direct your attention to the first column that shows you the interval of incomes that could determine what bracket an earner falls. Since she earns 74,000, she falls in between 37,651 and 91,150. So she falls in the third bracket right here. So how much is she going to pay? She's going to pay $5,183.75 plus 25% of whatever she earns over 37,650. Okay? So let's go ahead and indicate what our computations are going to be. It's going to be $5,183.75 plus 25% over 37,650. Okay? Now let's go ahead and start by calculating how much she earns over 37,650. So amount over is going to be her annual salary of 74,000 minus 37,650. If you carry out the difference, you end up with 36,350. Now we can compute her federal taxes. Her federal taxes are going to be the base amount, $5,183.75 plus 25% of this amount over 74,000. Now we need to change 25% into decimal. How do we achieve this? You simply move the decimal point 2 places to the left. That is equivalent to dividing 25 by 100. That is what percent means. So we will have 25% of this amount is the same thing in mathematical notation as 0.25 multiplied by the amount 36,350. If you enter this expression into your calculator just as it is, you will end up with her annual federal tax of $14,271.25. But what are her federal taxes per pay period? Let's figure that out. So her federal taxes per pay period is simply her annual federal taxes of $14,271.25 divided by the number of pay periods she has. She is paid biweekly, so that is going to be 26. If you input that into your calculator, you get her federal tax deduction per paycheck of $548.89. Okay, this is how much that will be deducted from her paycheck every 2 weeks for federal taxes. Now let's advance to the second deduction, which is state taxes. So how much does she pay for state tax? The state taxes for Maria here is of a graduated nature. We are going to calculate her graduated state tax by making use of this graduated state income table provided for us in the problem. As you can see, there are going to be two bases for the taxation, 2% for the first 20,000 and then 3% for any dollar figure over 20,000. Okay, so let's indicate that in our setup. We have two bases here. The first basis is at 2% and the second basis is at 3%. Okay? Now let's start by computing the first basis. So the first basis can be determined by taking the amount in the first bracket. We have 20,000 and then computing 2% of that dollar figure. 2% in decimal form is 0.02. This can be accomplished by moving the decimal point 2 places to the left as we did in the previous problem. Now if you enter these product into your calculator, you will end up with $400 as the first basis that she pays for her state taxes. Now there is a second basis that she has to pay because she earns over 20,000. So how much does she earn over 20,000? That should be taxed at the 3% rate. To achieve that, we will calculate the difference between her earnings and the dollar figure in the first basis, which is $20,000. We're going to be multiplying this by the tax rate in the second basis of 3%. In decimal form, that's written as 0.03. Now, if you carry out this difference, you'll get 54,000. You can do that mentally or with your calculator, or alternatively, you can enter this entire expression in your calculator. Now multiply that by 0.03 and you will get $1,620 as her tax payment for the second basis. Now what is her annual state tax deduction? Annual state income tax. This can be determined by finding the sum of the taxes she pays in the two bases. So we add 400 and $1,620. If we compute the sum, we have $2,020. This is how much Maria pays in taxes every year. But how much does she pay per pay period? Let's determine that. State tax per pay period. This can be determined by finding the quotient of her annual income tax and the number of pay periods, which is 26. So you just simply divide these and you will end up with $77.69. This is how much Maria pays for state taxes every pay period. Okay, let's advance to the next deduction, which is Medicare tax. Deduction number 3. The Medicare tax, as indicated in the problem, is a flat percentage rate of 1.45. So she's going to be taxed at 1.45% of all her earnings. So let's go ahead and carry out the calculations. Her Medicare tax is going to be her annual earnings of $74,000 times 1.45 in decimal form. This can be achieved by moving the decimal 2 places to the left. That gives us 0.0145. If you enter this product into your calculators, you will end up with $1,073 for her annual Medicare taxes. So what will her Medicare tax per pay period be? Let's go ahead and compute that. Medicare tax per pay period is simply what you get when you divide her annual Medicare tax, 1,073, by the number of pay periods, 26. Carry out this division with your calculators, you end up with $41.27. This is the dollar figure that is deducted from Maria's paycheck for Medicare tax. Now let's proceed to our fourth deduction. And this is the Social Security tax. Okay? Based on her earnings, her Social Security tax will be a 6.2% rate. Okay? So she's going to be taxed at 6.2%. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and carry out the calculations. Her Social Security tax per year is going to be her annual earnings of $74,000 multiplied by 6.2% in decimal form, 0.062. If you carry out this product in your calculators, you end up with 4,588 for her Social Security taxes per year. Now let's figure out how much she pays for Social Security per pay period. So her Social Security tax per pay period, just as we have done in the previous problems, is to take her annual Social Security earnings of 4,588 and divide it by the number of periods in her pay period, which is 26. If you carry out this division in your calculator, you will get $176.46. This is the amount that's deducted from her paycheck every 2 weeks for Social Security. Now let's take a look at the fifth and final deduction from Maria's paycheck, and this is her medical insurance cost. Medical insurance. She has a premium of $4,000, but the company pays 60% of this amount. Okay? So if Maria's company pays 60% of her medical insurance every year, how much does she pay? What percentage is her responsibility? Maria pays the following percentage. Full payment 100% minus what the company pays. So she is responsible for the difference, which is 40%. So she pays 40% of the premium every year for medical insurance. So what is the dollar value of her payment? So we can simply calculate her medical insurance cost. Let's write this down. Her medical insurance cost by taking the premium amount, which is $4,000, and then computing 40% of this premium. 40% in decimal form is 0.4. If you carry out this product with your calculators, your final result will be $1,600 for her annual insurance premium. So how much does she pay for medical insurance per pay period? So let's determine that. Medical insurance cost per pay period. We want to know how much is taken from her paycheck every 2 weeks for medical insurance. So as we've done in previous parts, we'll just take her annual medical insurance cost and divide that by the number of pay periods in her pay period, which is 26. And that gives us $61.54. This is how much that gets deducted from Maria's paycheck every pay period for medical insurance costs. Okay, now let's go ahead and calculate the deduction. What is her total deduction going to be? So her deductions can be computed by finding the sum of the following. We're going to add her federal taxes plus her state tax plus her Medicare tax plus her Social Security tax plus her medical insurance, okay, medical insurance payment. Okay, we already know the dollar figures for each and every one of these deductions, so we'll just substitute them in here and compute the sum, okay? So her federal taxes is $548.89. Her state tax is $77.69. Her Medicare tax is $41.27. Her Social Security tax is $176.46. And finally, her medical insurance is $61.54. So what we're going to do is sum all these figures together with our calculators. If you do that, you will get her total deduction per pay period, every paycheck, of $905.85. So this is the amount that gets deducted from her gross pay per pay period. Okay, let's take a look at the third and final question, which is to find her net pay. Her net pay can be computed by using the formula gross pay minus the deductions. We know what her gross pay per period is, and we also know what the deductions are. So all we are simply going to do is find the difference. Okay, so her net pay is going to be her gross pay, which is $2,846.15, minus her deductions, which is a total of $905.85. If you compute the difference, you end up with $1,940.30. This is how much Maria gets to take home every 2 weeks as her net pay. Okay? Thanks so much for taking the time to watch this presentation. I really appreciate it. If you found the contents of this tutorial helpful in your study of personal financial calculations, do give us a thumbs up. Your positive feedback is very supportive to us. If you have any questions or comments, just place it in the comment section below, and we'll be more than glad to respond and support you. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for updates to other cool tutorials such as this. More clips can be found on math.serve.com. Thanks again for watching and have a wonderful day. Goodbye.